The autumn wind carries more than just dead leaves. Sometimes it brings whispers of things that should have stayed buried beneath the frost. I've collected 6 accounts that will make you question every rustling sound outside your window tonight. These are true horror stories. The keys felt wrong in my hand the moment the lawyer passed them to me. Cold, heavier than they should be. My grandmother's farmhouse sat 3 hours north, and I'd never been there, not once in my 32 years. She'd made sure of that. I arrived on October 28th, just as the sun began its early descent. The house looked like it had been holding its breath for decades. White paint peeled in long strips, shutters hung crooked, and the porch sagged in the middle like a broken spine. But it was the cornfield behind the property that made me stop halfway up the gravel drive. The stalks were dead. That much I expected in late October. What I didn't expect was how they leaned away from a perfect circle in the center of the field, all bowing outward like they were terrified of whatever occupied that space. The circle itself was maybe 30 feet across, and from where I stood, I could see the earth inside it was darker than the surrounding soil. Richer, well-fed. The front door opened with a long creak that sounded almost like a warning. Inside, dust coated every surface in a thick gray blanket, except for a clear trail of footprints leading from the door to the kitchen and back. My grandmother's, I assumed. Made the day she died, based on what the lawyer told me. She'd collapsed in the driveway, mail in hand, dead before the ambulance arrived. The house still smelled like her. Lavender and old books and something earthier underneath. Something that reminded me of turned soil after rain. I followed those footprints to the kitchen and found her journal on the table, sitting in the only clean spot in the entire house. Like she'd left it there for me specifically. My hands shook as I opened it. The entries went back 40 years, but they all said essentially the same thing. Dates, times, brief notes about the weather, and one phrase repeated over and over. Fed him at dusk, all quiet. The final entry was dated October 15th, the day before she died. I'm too weak to carry it anymore. The bucket is too heavy. My arms won't work right. I tried yesterday and only made it halfway to the circle before I had to turn back. He knows. I can feel him watching the house now. Waiting. Emma, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I tried to spare you. But he needs to be fed before the first frost, or he'll come inside looking for warmth. The bucket is in the cellar. You'll know what goes in it. Don't look at his face. Never look at his face. And whatever you do, don't let him speak to you. His voice sounds like people you love. But it's not them. It's never them. My chest felt tight. I read it again, then a third time, trying to make sense of words that seemed designed to make no sense at all. Fed him. The circle. Don't look at his face. I should have left. Any rational person would have walked out that door, driven back to the city, and put the property up for sale without ever stepping foot inside again. But my grandmother had never been dramatic. Never told stories or joked around. She'd been practical and cold and deeply serious about everything. If she'd written this, she believed it. The cellar door was in the kitchen, half hidden behind a warped pantry cabinet I had to shove aside. The stairs going down were steep and narrow, and I had to use my phone's flashlight to see. The smell hit me before I reached the bottom. Rot and copper and that same rich earth smell from upstairs, only concentrated, stronger. The bucket sat in the center of the dirt floor. It was galvanized steel, old and dented, with a handle worn smooth from decades of use. Next to it was a large knife, the blade stained dark with rust or something worse. I backed up the stairs so fast I nearly fell. My phone said it was 4:47. Sunset was around 5:30. I had less than an hour before dusk. I grabbed the journal and flipped through it frantically, looking for an explanation, but every entry was the same. Just that one phrase. Fed him at dusk. Nothing about what went in the bucket, nothing about who or what he was. The window above the sink looked out over the backyard and the cornfield beyond. As I watched, something moved in the circle. Just a shadow at first, there and gone. Then I saw it again. Tall, too tall, standing perfectly still in the center of that dark earth. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother asking if I'd made it to the house okay. I started to type a response, but movement outside caught my eye again. The figure was closer now, still in the circle, but at the edge of it, facing the house, facing me. I couldn't see details. The distance and the dying light made everything fuzzy and indistinct, but I could see how wrong the proportions were. Arms too long, head tilted at an angle that made my stomach turn. It took a step forward, out of the circle, into the dead corn. The first frost, the radio in my car had said, was expected tonight. I looked at the journal in my shaking hands, at my grandmother's handwriting growing more unsteady with each entry, at the final desperate note she'd left for me. The bucket is in the cellar. You'll know what goes in it. Outside, the figure took another step toward the house, then another, moving slow but steady like it had all the time in the world, like it knew I had nowhere else to go. I locked every door and window before the sun fully set. Not that I thought locks would matter, but I needed to feel like I was doing something. The figure had disappeared back into the corn after that third step, melting into the dead stalks like it had never been there at all. The sound started at 6:13, a dry, scraping noise, like something being dragged through brittle vegetation. Then, shuffling, the rustle of dried leaves and hollow corn husks being disturbed. I stood in the dark kitchen, too afraid to turn on lights, watching the field through the window. The moon was nearly full, painting everything in silver and shadow. He was there again, standing at the very edge of the circle, exactly where I'd first seen him, motionless, facing the house. I watched him for 3 hours straight. He never moved, never swayed in the wind that made the corn stalks dance around him. Just stood there, a dark slash against the moonlit field, watching back. I didn't sleep that night. When dawn finally came, the figure was gone. The nearest neighbor lived half a mile down the road. I drove there around 9 in the morning, desperate for answers or reassurance, or just another human being who might tell me I was losing my mind. The house was small and well kept, with pumpkins on the porch and a wreath of autumn leaves on the door. An older man answered, maybe 70, with suspicious eyes that got more guarded the moment I mentioned where I was staying. "You're Martha's granddaughter," he said. Not a question. "Did you know her?" Everybody knew her. Kept to herself mostly. He started to close the door. "Wait, please. I need to know about the property, about the field. There's something—" "Not my business," he cut me off. "Wasn't my business when your grandmother was alive. Sure as hell isn't now that she's gone. But you know something. I can see it in your face." He looked at me for a long moment, something like pity crossing his features. "Best advice I can give you is sell that place and don't look back. Some properties got history that should stay buried." "What kind of history?" But he'd already shut the door. I tried 2 more houses, got the same response. Either people pretended they didn't know what I was talking about, or they shut me out the moment I mentioned the farmhouse. The last woman I spoke to, probably in her 80s, actually made the sign of the cross when she saw me standing on her porch. "Your grandmother was a good woman," she whispered. "She did what needed doing. That's all I'll say." Back at the house, I started searching. Really searching. The journal had to be part of something bigger. My grandmother had lived here for 40 years. There had to be more. I found the photographs in the attic, tucked inside an old trunk beneath moth-eaten blankets. Hundreds of them, spanning decades. My grandmother as a young woman, barely 30. Her husband, my grandfather, who I'd never met. He'd died before I was born. Car accident, my mother had said, though she never wanted to talk about it. I spread the photos across the attic floor, organizing them by date based on the clothes and the house's changing appearance. 1984, 1991, 2003, 2015. That's when I noticed him. In a photo from 1987, my grandparents standing in front of the house on what looked like a summer day. There was a dark smudge at the edge of the cornfield. I grabbed a flashlight for a better look, not a smudge. A figure, tall and thin, barely visible between the stalks. My hands shook as I went through more photos. A birthday party, 2001. Children playing in the yard, and there, in the background, half hidden by the corn, the figure, 1995. My grandmother hanging laundry, the figure at the field's edge, clearer this time. 2009, my grandfather's funeral. I recognized my mother in the crowd, younger, her face twisted with grief. Behind everyone, beyond the gathered mourners, standing in the cornfield, the figure, always watching. The oldest photo was dated 1978, shortly after my grandparents bought the property. They were smiling, arms around each other, the house freshly painted behind them. The cornfield was young and green. And there, in that perfect circle in the center, was the figure. But in this photo, I could see him clearly. Too tall, too thin, arms that hung past his knees, and his head, tilted at that awful angle, like his neck was broken. I heard the scraping sound, even though it was barely 4 in the afternoon. The sun still hung above the horizon, warm October light streaming through the attic window. He shouldn't be out yet. Not until dusk. That's what the journal said. I ran to the window and looked out over the field. He was standing in the circle again, but closer to the house than last night. Maybe 20 feet closer. As I watched, he took one long, deliberate step forward, then another. Moving in broad daylight now, no longer waiting for darkness. He'd been patient for decades, fed regularly, kept satisfied. But my grandmother had missed 2 feedings now, almost 2 weeks, and he was done waiting. I pulled out my phone to call someone, anyone, but froze when I saw my reflection in the dark attic window. Behind my reflection, visible in the glass, was the view of the field below. The figure was gone from the circle. The scraping sound came from downstairs now, inside the house. I didn't breathe, didn't move, just stood frozen in the attic, listening to that scraping sound drag itself across the floor below. Slow, methodical, like something relearning how to walk after a very long time. Then it stopped. I waited in the suffocating silence for 5 minutes before I found the courage to move. My legs barely worked as I crept down the attic stairs, my phone clutched in one shaking hand. The hallway below was empty. Every door stood open exactly as I'd left it. But the smell, God, the smell. That rich earth scent had filled the entire house, thick and cloying, mixed with something rotting underneath. I checked every room. Nothing. No signs of entry. No broken windows. The back door was still locked from the inside. When I looked out the kitchen window, the figure stood in the circle again, exactly where he'd been before. Like he'd never moved at all. I left, threw my things in the car and drove straight to a motel in town. Tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. Some trick of old house acoustics and my exhausted mind. But I knew better. He'd been inside, testing, reminding me that locks meant nothing. I stayed away for 3 days. 3 days of trying to work up the courage to go back, or the resolve to just walk away forever. On October 31st, Halloween night, my mother called. "Have you been having dreams about the farmhouse?" she asked without preamble. My blood went cold. "What?" "I have. Every night since you went there. I see that field, that circle." Her voice cracked. "I see him standing there. He's waiting for something, Emma. And he's getting impatient." "Mom, what are you talking about? You've never even been to that house." "Yes, I have. Once, when I was 7 years old. My mother brought me there, made me watch while she went quiet for a long moment. She made me watch while she did what needed doing. Then she sent me away and told me never to come back. Said she was protecting me. But it doesn't matter now, does it? Distance doesn't matter. He's in my dreams, Emma. He's in my head. And he'll stay there until someone feeds him." She hung up before I could respond. I drove back to the farmhouse as the sun set. The sky bled orange and purple, and by the time I pulled into the driveway, full darkness had fallen. Every light in the house was on, even though I'd left them all off. The front door stood wide open. The journal sat on the kitchen table, open to a page I hadn't seen before. The paper was different here, older, the handwriting not my grandmother's, but someone else's from much further back. The ink had faded to brown. "The offering must be made willing. Blood of your blood, given in sacrifice. Cut deep along your left forearm, 7 times for the 7 seasons he has walked this land. Fill the bucket. Carry it to the circle before the bells of midnight on All Hallows' Eve. Pour it on the dark earth. Speak his name 3 times. He will feed and sleep for 1 more season. This is the bargain. This has always been the bargain. When you can no longer make the offering, it passes to your bloodline. The debt does not die. The debt never dies." Below that, in my grandmother's shaking handwriting, were her final words. "I couldn't let it pass to you. I tried to starve him instead. Forgive me for failing." The scratching started on the back porch, louder than before, more insistent. I looked out the window and saw him pressed against the door, his face finely visible in the porch light. It wasn't a face. Not really. Just a suggestion of features and papery skin stretched over bone. Empty eye sockets that somehow still saw. A mouth that opened too wide, showing darkness that went down and down forever. The knife from the cellar sat next to the journal. The bucket waited by the basement door. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "He's standing at the foot of my bed." Then my aunt. "Is this you? Why am I seeing that thing?" My cousin. My sister. Messages flooding in from family I barely spoke to, all describing the same thing. Him. In their homes. In their rooms. Watching. Waiting. The scratching grew frantic. Wood splintered. The door wouldn't hold much longer. I had 2 choices. I could run, get in my car and drive away and let this thing hunt my family through their dreams and eventually their waking hours until someone broke and came here to finish what needed finishing. The debt would remain. The debt never dies. Or I could pick up that knife. My hand shook as I reached for it. The blade was cold. So cold. I looked at my left arm, at the pale skin of my inner forearm where the veins showed blue beneath the surface. 7 cuts. Fill the bucket, carry it to the circle. Bind myself to this property. Bind myself to feeding him every season until I was too old and weak to continue. And then it would pass to my own children if I ever had them. An inheritance of horror, a legacy of blood. The back door exploded inward. He filled the doorway, 7 feet tall if he was an inch, arms hanging to his knees, head tilted at that broken angle. When he opened his mouth, my grandmother's voice came out. "Emma, sweetheart, it's time. You know what needs doing." I pressed the blade against my skin and felt it bite. Warm blood welled up, running down my arm. 1 cut. The bucket waited. He took a step into the house, then another. His movement was wrong, joints bending in ways they shouldn't, like a puppet with too many strings. "That's it, darling," he said in my mother's voice now. "Just like your grandmother, just like her grandmother. Good girls, all of you such good girls." 2 cuts, 3. The blood flowed faster. The bucket was filling. 4 cuts, 5. My vision blurred at the edges. The kitchen tilted. He stood right in front of me now. I could smell him. Earth and rot and something older than names. His hand reached out, fingers too long, too many joints, stretching toward my face. 6 more cuts, he whispered in my own voice. "And then, you're mine forever." I looked at the knife in my hand, at the bucket half full of blood, at the open door behind him and the dark cornfield beyond. Then I looked at his empty eyes and smiled. "No," I said. "I don't think so." I drove the knife into the bucket's bottom and ran. The banner stretched across Main Street read, "Maple Grove Fall Festival, celebrating our heritage." In the same faded letters I remembered from childhood. 20 years. That's how long it had been since I'd left this town, and I'd sworn I'd never come back. But my sister's wedding gave me no choice. Except when I called her last week to confirm the details, she didn't answer. Nobody did. Not my parents. Not my old friends whose numbers I still had saved in my phone. Every call went to voicemail. Every text delivered, but never read. So I drove here instead. 4 hours northeast to the town where I'd spent the first 18 years of my life. Where I'd gone to school, had my first kiss, broken my arm falling out of Tommy Chen's treehouse. Where everyone knew everyone. Nothing ever really changed. The festival was in full swing when I arrived Saturday afternoon. The same craft booths lined the town square. The same smell of kettle corn and apple cider hung in the autumn air. Even the decorations looked identical to my memories. Orange and black streamers, construction paper leaves taped to storefront windows, hay bales arranged around a wooden stage where a bluegrass band played. I parked near the community center and walked toward the crowd, looking for familiar faces. There was the bakery where Mrs. Henderson used to sneak me cookies. The hardware store my dad went to every Saturday morning. The gazebo where Sarah Mitchell and I had our first date. Sarah, I spotted her almost immediately, standing by the apple bobbing booth with 2 kids clinging to her legs. She'd be 38 now, same as me. Her hair was shorter, but I'd know that smile anywhere. "Sarah," I called out, weaving through the crowd. She turned, and her smile faltered. Polite confusion crossed her face as I approached. "Hey, it's me, David Chen. I'm sorry." She pulled her children a little closer. "Do I know you?" The question hit me like a slap. "Sarah, come on, it's David. We dated senior year. You wore my Letterman jacket. We went to prom together." Her husband appeared beside her, protective, suspicious. "Can we help you with something?" I'm from here. I grew up here." "Sarah, you really don't remember me?" "I think you have me confused with someone else," she said, already backing away. "I've lived here my whole life. I'd remember you." I watched them disappear into the crowd, my chest tight with something between panic and disbelief. A joke. It had to be some kind of elaborate joke. Small town hazing the guy who left and never looked back. My parents' house was 6 blocks away. I half jogged there, my breath coming faster with each step. The blue shutters were still there. The oak tree I'd climbed 1,000 times. The porch where I'd sat every summer evening, desperate to escape to somewhere bigger. A woman answered the door, maybe 50, wearing an apron dusted with flour. Behind her, I could see the living room. Wrong furniture, wrong pictures on the walls, wrong everything. "Can I help you?" she asked. Who are you?" "Excuse me. This is my house. My parents' house. Robert and Linda Chen. Where are they?" Her expression shifted from confused to concerned. "Young man, my family has owned this house for 3 generations. There's no one by that name here. I think you might be confused." No, I'm not confused. I grew up in this house. My room was upstairs, second door on the left. I had baseball posters on the walls. My height marks are still on the door frame in the kitchen. "I'm calling the police," she said, and shut the door in my face. I stood there on the porch where I'd learned to tie my shoes, staring at a door that had been mine but wasn't anymore. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and searched for my parents' names. Nothing. No social media, no listings, like they'd never existed. I searched for myself. David Chen, Maple Grove, nothing. The high school was open for festival parking. I went there next, found my way to the trophy case in the main hallway. There should have been a photo of our basketball team from 2005, state champions. I was in that photo. Number 23, front row, grinning like an idiot. The photo was there. The team. The trophy. But I counted the players. 12. There should have been 13. I scanned the faces frantically. Tommy Chen, my best friend. Jake Morrison. Brett Saunders. Everyone I remembered. Except the space where I should have been standing didn't look empty. It looked complete. Like there had never been 13 players at all. "You're starting to understand, aren't you?" I spun around. An elderly woman stood behind me, leaning on a gnarled walking stick. She wore layers of shawls despite the mild October weather, and her eyes were milky with cataracts. "Who are you?" "I run the fortune-telling booth. Madame Esther, though that's not my real name." She tilted her head, studying me with those clouded eyes. "You really shouldn't have come back, David." "My name." She'd used my name. "You know me. You remember me." "I remember everyone," she whispered. "That's my curse. I'm the only one who does." "What's happening? Why doesn't anyone recognize me?" She glanced down the hallway, making sure we were alone. 20 years ago, on October 31st, you left town. You were 18. You drove away and never looked back. Do you remember what you said?" I did. I'd said it to my parents during our last fight. I said I wished this town would forget I ever existed. And at midnight on Halloween 20 years ago, it did. The town made you disappear, not just from people's memories, from time itself. You never existed here, David. You never went to school here, never played basketball, never dated Sarah Mitchell. Your parents never had a son. That's insane. Is it? Then explain why you're here, standing in a town that has no record of you, looking at a photo you're not in. My legs felt weak. There has to be a way to fix this. There is. That's why I told you not to come back. She leaned closer, her breath smelling of mint and something medicinal. The town takes one person every 20 years. Always someone who leaves and wants to forget. It grants their wish, but it keeps them trapped in the moment they left. You've been here for 20 years, David. You just didn't know it. And now that you've come back, now that you're starting to remember. Remember what? That you never left at all. The festival sounds outside seem to grow louder. The same bluegrass music, the same laughter, the same announcements over the crackling PA system. I pulled out my phone. The date read October 31st, 2005. No, I whispered. Every year you come back for the festival, Madame Esther said softly. Every year you try to make them remember. And every year at midnight, you forget again. Reset, trapped in the same October day, forever. You're lying. Am I? Then tell me, David. What were you doing yesterday? Last week? Last month? I opened my mouth to answer and found nothing there. No memories before getting in my car this morning. Before driving to a town I'd left 20 years ago. Except I hadn't left, had I? There's only one way out, she said. At midnight tonight, when the veil is thinnest, you can leave, really leave. But someone has to take your place. What? That's how it works. The town needs its offering. Its ghost in the machine, trapped in time. If you leave, someone else has to stay. Someone who wants to forget. Someone who wishes they'd never existed here. She pointed toward the festival outside, toward all those smiling faces enjoying their perfect autumn afternoon. Choose wisely, David. You have until midnight. She turned and walked away, her stick tapping against the tile floor, leaving me alone with a photo I wasn't in and memories that maybe never happened at all. Outside, the band started playing again. The same song, the same notes, like they'd been playing it for 20 years. I stumbled out of the high school in a daze, Madame Esther's words echoing in my skull. The festival sprawled before me, and for the first time, I really looked at it. The decorations weren't just similar to what I remembered. They were identical. That same torn corner on the pumpkin carving contest banner, the same crooked scarecrow leaning against the gazebo post. Even the hay bales were arranged in exactly the same pattern, down to the loose stalks scattered on the ground. I walked through the crowd, studying faces. A teenager passed wearing a Linkin Park shirt, the Meteora tour from 2003. A woman in low-rise jeans and a baby tee. A man with a flip phone clipped to his belt. Styles from 20 years ago, worn not as costumes, but as everyday clothes. My phone had no signal. I tried calling my sister again, but the call wouldn't connect. When I checked the date, it flickered. October 31st, 2005. Then 2006, 2012, 2025. The numbers cycled through years like a broken slot machine before settling back on 2005. Kettle corn. Get your fresh kettle corn. I knew that voice. Old Mr. Patterson ran the kettle corn stand when I was a kid. I pushed through the crowd and found him there, looking exactly as I remembered. Same red apron, same weathered hands, working the copper pot. Mr. Patterson? He looked up with a friendly smile. Kettle corn? Do you know who I am? Should I, son? I used to buy from you every year, David Chen. You always gave me extra because I helped you set up. His smile never wavered, but something in his eyes went flat. Sorry, don't recall. That'll be $4 if you want it back. I backed away and nearly collided with the community bulletin board. Flyers for bake sales and lost cats and yard work services covered the corkboard. And there, in the bottom corner, partially hidden beneath an ad for guitar lessons, was a missing person flyer. My hands shook as I unpinned it. The photo was my senior picture, 18-year-old me grinning at the camera in a blue button-down shirt. Missing, David Chen. Last seen October 31st, 2005. If you have any information, please contact Maple Grove Police Department. The date, 2005, 20 years ago. The night I'd left. Except I hadn't left, had I? I found Madame Esther's fortune-telling booth tucked behind the craft fair tents. She sat at a small table draped in purple velvet, a crystal ball positioned between two flickering candles. No customers waited. No one seemed to notice the booth at all. "You're starting to see it now," she said as I approached. "The cracks in the illusion. Tell me everything. How does this work?" She gestured for me to sit. Up close, her eyes looked even more clouded, like she was seeing through fog. "Maple Grove is old, David. Older than the settlers who founded it. There was something here before. Something that feeds on time itself. The town made a bargain with it generations ago. Every 20 years, it takes someone. Traps them in a single day, looping forever. In exchange, everyone else gets to keep moving forward, safe, protected, prosperous. That's insane. Is it? This town has never had a murder, never had a serious crime. No one gets sick here, not really. No accidents, no tragedies. Everyone lives long, happy lives." She leaned forward. "Except the ones who are chosen, the ones who want to leave, who wish they could forget." I didn't know what I was saying. I was 18 and angry. Words have power, especially on Halloween, especially in a town like this. She waved her hand over the crystal ball. Images swirled in the glass. Me, driving away from Maple Grove in my old Honda. Me, pulling over on the highway, suddenly confused. Me, turning around and driving back. You tried to leave, but the moment you crossed the town line at midnight, you snapped back. You've been here ever since, living the same day over and over. Most of the time, you don't even realize it. The loop resets, and you forget. But I remember 20 years. I remember leaving. I remember living in the city. My job. My apartment. Memories the loop creates to keep you docile, to keep you from fighting. But something broke tonight. Maybe you've been here too long. Maybe the magic is weakening. Either way, you're aware now. And that's dangerous. I looked out at the festival. Children ran past with caramel apples. The band played Wagon Wheel for what might have been the 1,000th time. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful. You said I could leave at midnight. How? The veil between times is thinnest then. For a few minutes, you'll be able to step out of the loop. But only if someone takes your place. She pulled out a leather-bound book and opened it to a page covered in names and dates. See? September 17th, 1985. Margaret Holloway. March 3rd, 2001. Peter Morrison. October 31st, 2005. David Chen. My name, written in ink that looked fresh despite being there for 20 years. "Someone in this town wants to leave," she continued. "Wants to forget. Maybe they don't even know it yet. But the town knows. It always knows. Find them, make them say the words, and at midnight, you can trade places." I can't do that. I can't trap someone else here. Then you stay. Forever. She closed the book with a soft thud. Those are your only choices, David. Sacrifice someone else or be the sacrifice. I stood up, my chair scraping against the ground. There has to be another way. There isn't. I've watched this happen 6 times now. I'm the only one who remembers all of them because I'm the one who explains the rules. That's my curse. To watch and remember and never be able to change anything. Her voice cracked. I was the offering in 1945, David. I've been trapped here for 80 years. The only reason I'm still aware is because they need someone to guide the next sacrifice, to make sure the ritual completes. 80 years. The number made my stomach turn. At midnight, she whispered, you'll see the truth. You'll see what's really here, what's been feeding on you all this time. And then you'll understand why you need to choose someone else. Because the alternative. She looked at me with those milky eyes, and for just a moment, I saw past the cataracts to something ancient and terrified underneath. The alternative is so much worse than you can imagine. The church bells began to chime. 9 o'clock. 3 hours until midnight. 3 hours to decide if I could damn someone else to save myself. I wandered through the festival in a fog, watching people who couldn't see me. Not really see me. They looked past me, through me, their eyes sliding away like I was nothing more than a trick of the light. I tested it. Stood directly in front of a couple holding hands, waved my arms. They walked around me without breaking stride, without even acknowledging the obstacle. Like my body was just empty space they instinctively avoided. The realization hit me hard enough to make me stumble. I wasn't invisible. I was absent. A ghost haunting a moment that had already passed. 20 years gone, but still playing out like a recording stuck on repeat. 10 o'clock. The festival would run until 11:30. Then people would drift home. At midnight, everything would reset. I'd wake up in my car again, driving into town, convinced I'd left 20 years ago, desperate to find my family for a wedding that would never happen. How many times had I done this? Hundreds. Thousands. 7,300 days in 20 years. Had I lived them all? Or did time skip and jump? The loop playing out only when it needed to. I found myself back at my childhood home. The windows glowed warm with light. Through the glass, I could see the woman who'd answered the door earlier. She was setting the table for dinner. A man helped her, probably her husband. 2 kids sat in the living room watching a television that showed a sitcom I vaguely recognized from the early 2000s. They looked happy, content, real, and I was the thing haunting their walls, visible only to myself. You're running out of time. I spun around. Madame Esther stood on the sidewalk behind me, her face shadowed in the streetlight. I can't do it, I said. I can't trap someone else here. Then you've made your choice. She didn't sound surprised, just tired. At midnight, the veil will thin. You'll be able to see what holds you here. What's been feeding on your trapped time for 20 years. Most people break when they see it. The loop resets before they can finish screaming. What is it? Something old. Something that was here before the town, before the settlers, before the tribes that came before them. It lives in the spaces between moments, in the gaps where time stutters and folds. The town's bargain keeps it satisfied. One person trapped in a single day, their time slowly consumed like food. It's been eating your October 31st for 2 decades, David, sucking every second dry. The church bells chimed again. 11 o'clock. There's still time to choose, she said. Look around. Someone here wants to leave. Someone here is suffering enough to make that wish. Find them. Save yourself. She walked away, her cane tapping against the sidewalk, leaving me alone with my impossible choice. I returned to the festival. Most people were packing up now, folding tables and collecting unsold goods. But some remained, die-hard revelers squeezing out the last drops of celebration. That's when I saw her. A teenage girl, maybe 17, sitting alone on a bench near the gazebo. She was crying quietly, her phone clutched in her hand. I moved closer and heard her whispered words. "I hate this town. I hate everyone here. I wish I could just disappear. I wish I'd never existed." The words. The exact words I'd said 20 years ago. She was the one. The town had already chosen her. All I had to do was encourage it, talk to her, make sure she said those words again at midnight, and I'd be free. I sat down next to her. "Bad night?" She looked up, startled. For a moment, I thought she'd ignore me like everyone else. But then her eyes focused. She could see me. "Do I know you?" she asked. "No, but I know how you feel. This town, it suffocates you, doesn't it? Makes you feel trapped. You have no idea." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Everyone here is so fake, so happy all the time, like nothing bad ever happens. But things are bad. My life is falling apart and everyone just smiles and tells me it'll be fine. I just want to escape, to go somewhere no one knows me. What's your name?" "Emily." "Emily, listen to me very carefully. In about 45 minutes, it'll be midnight. Whatever you do, don't make any wishes. Don't say you want to disappear. Don't say you wish you'd never existed. Do you understand?" She stared at me like I was insane. "What are you talking about?" "This town takes people who want to leave. It traps them. I've been trapped here for 20 years, Emily, living the same day over and over. You're about to be chosen. I can feel it. But you can't avoid it. Just don't make the wish." "You're crazy." She stood up, backing away. "Stay away from me." "Emily, please." But she was running now, disappearing into the thinning crowd. I just condemned myself, warned away the only person who could have taken my place. The bells began to chime. Midnight. 12 slow, deliberate chimes that seemed to vibrate in my bones. The festival froze. Every person stopped mid-motion, suspended like mannequins. The lights flickered and dimmed. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in an instant, my breath misting in the suddenly frigid air. And then I saw it. The thing between moments. It had no solid form, just a writhing mass of impossible geometry that hurt to look at. Angles that shouldn't exist, shadows that cast light. It moved through the frozen festival, and where it passed, time itself seemed to decay. Colors faded, objects aged and crumbled. It was eating the moment, consuming it. And I realized with horror that this was what had been feeding on my trapped day for 20 years. It turned toward me. I don't know how I knew it was looking at me, since it had no eyes. But I felt its attention like a physical weight, crushing and hungry. The veil was thin. I could run, try to escape, while the moment hung suspended between 1 second and the next. But Emily's face flashed through my mind. That scared 17-year-old girl who'd probably just saved herself by running away from the crazy man on the bench. I couldn't do it. Couldn't damn her or anyone else to this. The thing moved closer. Its presence made my skin crawl, made every instinct scream at me to flee. But I stood my ground. "I'm still here," I whispered. "I choose to stay." It reached me. And then it was inside me, pouring through my mouth and nose and eyes, filling me with darkness and cold, and the weight of 20 years lived in a single, endless day. The last thing I heard before the loop reset was Madame Esther's voice, sad and ancient. "Same time next year, David. Maybe then you'll be ready to make the choice." The bells finished chiming. And I woke up in my car, driving into Maple Grove, convinced I'd left 20 years ago. Ready to live October 31st, 2005, for the 7,301st time. That the Colonial was perfect. That's what my wife Karen kept saying as we pulled into the driveway for the first time. Perfect wraparound porch, perfect gabled windows, perfect price for a house this size, which should have been our first warning. Look at those trees, Karen breathed, staring up at the massive oaks surrounding the property. They had to be centuries old, their trunks wider than our car, branches spreading like skeletal fingers across the October sky. Our daughter Lily pressed her face against the back window. So many leaves, Mommy. She wasn't wrong. The yard was covered in them. A thick carpet of red and gold and brown that crunched under our feet as we explored the property. More leaves than I'd ever seen in one place, and they just kept falling, drifting down in an endless autumn rain. We moved in on October 3rd. By October 5th, Lily had claimed the backyard as her kingdom. She'd spend hours out there, building leaf piles and jumping in them, her laughter echoing across the property. Karen and I were just happy she'd adjusted so well to the move. Our old apartment in the city had no yard, no space for a 7-year-old to run and play. She's talking to herself out there, Karen mentioned one evening as we unpacked boxes in the kitchen. Through the window, we could see Lily sitting in a massive pile of leaves, her lips moving in animated conversation. "Imaginary friend," I said. "It's normal. She'll make real friends once school starts." But the talking continued. Every afternoon after we'd pick her up from her new school, Lily would rush straight to the backyard. She'd find the biggest leaf pile, always the same one near the oldest oak, and settle in. Sometimes we'd hear her laughing. Other times, her voice would drop to a whisper, like she was sharing secrets. "What do you talk about out there?" Karen asked her one night at dinner. Lily shrugged, pushing her chicken around her plate. "Just stuff. He likes to hear about my day." "He?" "My friend, the one who lives in the leaves." Karen and I exchanged glances. "Does your friend have a name?" Lily went quiet for a moment, her fork hovering over her plate. "He says he used to have a name, but he's been down there so long, he forgot it." "Down where, sweetie?" "Under the leaves, in the dark place." She said it so matter-of-factly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "He says it's cold down there. That's why he likes it when I visit. I make it warmer." That night, after Lily went to bed, I stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard. The leaf pile she always played in seemed bigger somehow, darker. The moonlight didn't quite reach it. Like the shadows, they were thicker than they should be. "It's just imagination," Karen said from behind me. "You had imaginary friends when you were a kid, right?" I had. Whole cast of them. But something about this felt different. Something about the way Lily described him, down in the dark place, forgetting his name. The food started appearing 3 days later. I went to throw out the trash on Saturday morning and found a half-eaten sandwich sitting on top of the leaf pile. Then a granola bar, an apple with 2 small bites taken out of it, always placed carefully on the leaves, never scattered or dropped. "Lily, are you leaving food outside?" I asked her. She nodded, not looking up from her coloring book. "He gets hungry. He says he hasn't eaten in so long. I'm helping." "Honey, you can't waste food like that, and you're going to attract animals." "He's not an animal, Daddy." She looked at me then, and something in her eyes made me uncomfortable. "He's a person. He just can't come up anymore. The roots hold him down. I told Karen about it that evening after Lily was asleep. We decided to put a stop to it. No more playing in that particular leaf pile. We'd rake it away, scatter it across the yard. Problem solved. Except every morning, the pile was back. Bigger than before, more concentrated, like something was pulling the leaves toward that spot, gathering them, building them up. And Lily's behavior was changing. She'd started refusing to come inside before dark. We'd have to physically carry her in, and she'd scream and cry, saying he'd be lonely without her, that he needed her warmth. What does he look like? I finally asked her, crouching down to her level one evening as she sat by the back door, staring out at the darkening yard. I don't know, she whispered. I've never seen all of him. Just his hands sometimes, when they reach up through the leaves, they're really pale and thin, and his fingers are so long, Daddy. So long. My blood went cold. Lily, has he ever touched you? Just my hand, when we say goodbye. He holds it really gentle. He says I'm warm, that I remind him of being alive. That night, I went out to the leaf pile with a flashlight and a rake. I was going to clear the whole damn thing, dig down to the dirt, prove to myself there was nothing there. The leaves were deeper than I expected. I raked and raked, but they just kept going. 3 feet, 4 feet. The pile shouldn't have been that deep. It was physically impossible. At 5 feet down, my rake hit something solid. I bent down, pulled back more leaves with my hands, and froze. A face stared up at me from the darkness. Pale, gaunt, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, covered in a film of decay and dirt and rotted leaves that had become part of its skin. But the chest was moving, just barely. The shallowest rise and fall of breath. Whatever was down there was still alive, and my daughter had been holding its hand. I scrambled backward, dropping the rake, my heart hammering against my ribs. The face in the leaves didn't move, didn't open its eyes, just kept that barely perceptible breathing, chest rising and falling like something in hibernation. I ran inside and locked the door, told Karen we needed to call the police. But when I tried to explain what I'd seen, the words sounded insane even to my own ears. A living person buried under leaves? For how long? And why was it still breathing? Karen wanted to see for herself, but I wouldn't let her. Not with that thing out there. Not with Lily already so attached to it. We kept Lily inside the next day. She cried for hours, pressed against the back door, saying he was calling for her, that he was cold and scared and needed her warmth. We tried distracting her with TV, with toys, with promises of ice cream. Nothing worked. That's when I noticed the leaves. A small pile had formed in the corner of the living room. Just a handful, arranged in a neat circle. I swept them up, threw them in the trash. An hour later, another pile appeared in the hallway. Then one in Lily's bedroom, right next to her bed. How are they getting in? Karen whispered, staring at the leaves scattered across our daughter's floor. All the windows were closed. All the doors were locked. That night, I woke to a sound, a soft rustling, like something sliding across carpet. I sat up in bed, my eyes adjusting to the darkness. Leaves were pouring under our bedroom door. Not just a few, hundreds of them, streaming into the room like water, gathering in the corner, piling up. I jumped out of bed and threw open the door. The hallway was filled with them, leaves everywhere, covering the floor in a thick layer. And more were appearing from nowhere, materializing out of the air itself, drifting down like snow. Lily's door was open. Her bed was empty. I found her in the living room, sitting cross-legged in the center of a massive pile that hadn't been there when we went to bed. She was whispering to something in the leaves, her small hands patting them down, arranging them in patterns I didn't understand. "Lily, come here, right now." She looked up at me, and in the dim light from the hallway, her eyes looked different, darker, like shadows had pooled in them. "He's scared, Daddy. The leaves are how he moves, how he reaches. He wants to come inside where it's warm, but he can't. Not yet. He needs more time." I picked her up, carried her back to her room despite her protests. Karen and I took turns watching her the rest of the night. But every time I checked the living room, there were more leaves. They covered the couch, the coffee table, piled up against the walls. And they were arranged deliberately, forming spirals and circles and symbols that made my head hurt to look at. The next morning, I went to the neighbors. The Hendersons had lived on this street for 20 years. If anyone knew the history of our house, it would be them. Mrs. Henderson's face went pale when I mentioned the leaves. "You have a daughter," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, 7 years old. Why?" She invited me in, led me to her kitchen, and poured coffee with shaking hands. The previous owners, the Markhams, they had a daughter too, Emma. Sweet little thing, 8 years old. She loved playing in those leaves. What happened to her? She disappeared, October 21st, 7 years ago. They found her clothes in that leaf pile under the big oak. Just her clothes, folded neatly. No body, no blood, no sign of struggle, like she'd just stepped out of them and vanished. My coffee cup trembled in my hand. Did they ever find her? No. Police searched for months, dragged the pond, searched the woods, interviewed everyone in town. Nothing. Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, her voice dropping. But here's what they didn't tell the news. Emma wasn't the first. There was another child 7 years before her, Timothy Walsh. He lived 2 streets over. Disappeared the same way. Clothes in a leaf pile, child gone. 7 years, I whispered. My husband talked to some of the old-timers at the Elks Lodge. They say it's been happening for as long as anyone can remember. Every 7 years, in October, a child vanishes. Always near those old oaks, always in the leaves. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "You need to get your family out of that house. Today. Right now." I drove home too fast, my mind racing. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw them immediately. Leaves covering every window of the house. Not just scattered, but pressed against the glass like hands, like something inside was trying to look out. I burst through the front door and stopped cold. Lily sat in the middle of the living room, completely buried in leaves up to her neck. Only her head was visible, and she was smiling. Karen stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, her face white with terror. "Mommy tried to pull me out," Lily said in a voice that didn't sound quite like hers anymore. "But he won't let me go. He says it's almost time." 7 years in the dark is such a long time, Daddy. He's been waiting, getting stronger, feeling his way through the roots, learning how to move the leaves, how to reach. The pile around her shifted. Something pale moved beneath the surface. Fingers, long, thin fingers wrapping around Lily's shoulders, holding her down. "He says Emma kept him company for a while," Lily continued. "But she got too cold, too quiet. He needs someone new now, someone warm, someone alive. Lily, fight it. You have to fight. He's not trying to take me, Daddy." Her smile widened, and it was all wrong. "He's trying to become me. He's been feeding on my warmth all month, learning my voice, my laugh, the way I move. And tonight, When the moon is right, he's going to crawl up through the leaves and put on my skin like a costume. Then he'll finally be warm again. The leaves exploded upward. Something rose from beneath them, tall and twisted and wrong, still covered in dirt and decay, but moving now, fully awake. It wore Emma Markham's rotted clothes. No, I realized with horror. It wore the skin of every child it had taken, layered one over another, like a horrible collage. And it was reaching for my daughter with those impossibly long fingers, reaching for the warmth it had been promised, the warmth it was owed. 7 years of waiting, 7 years of hunger. Tonight, it would feed again. I grabbed a lamp from the side table and swung it at the thing rising from the leaves. The base connected with its head, or what passed for a head, and it crumbled like rotten wood. But the pieces kept moving, crawling, trying to reform. "Get Lily!" I screamed at Karen. She lunged forward, grabbed our daughter under the arms, and pulled. The thing's fingers left trails of black ichor on Lily's skin, but she came free. Karen ran with her toward the front door, while I backed away from the reforming creature. It wasn't whole yet, wasn't solid. The month of feeding on Lily's warmth hadn't been enough. It needed more time, more contact. We had until Halloween, less than 24 hours. We drove to a hotel in the next town over, put Lily in the bathtub, and scrubbed the black residue off her skin. She cried the whole time, saying we'd hurt him, that he was lonely, that he just wanted to be warm like us. "Baby, that thing is dangerous," Karen said, wrapping her in a towel. "It's not your friend." "But he is." He told me stories about all his other friends, about Emma and Timothy and Sarah and Michael and so many others. They all played with him. They all helped him. "Where are they now, Lily?" I asked quietly. "Where are those children?" She went silent, her eyes unfocused. "He says they're resting, under the roots, where it's dark and peaceful and they don't need to be warm anymore." Karen started crying. I held them both, feeling more helpless than I'd ever felt in my life. But we couldn't stay away. Around 3 in the morning, Lily began sleepwalking. She got out of bed, walked straight to the hotel room door, and started pulling at the handle. We stopped her, carried her back to bed, held her down while she thrashed and screamed. "He needs me. He's calling. It's almost time and I have to go back. I have to." At dawn, exhausted and desperate, we made a choice that would haunt me forever. We drove back to the house. If we were going to fight this thing, we needed to understand what it was, where it came from, how to kill it. The house was silent when we arrived. No leaves on the windows anymore, no piles in the rooms. Everything looked normal except for the backyard, where the massive oak tree seemed darker somehow, more solid, like it had grown denser overnight. We left Lily sleeping in the locked car and approached the leaf pile together. In daylight, it looked almost mundane, just autumn debris collected under an old tree. I started digging with my hands, Karen beside me. Within minutes, we found it. A hollow in the earth beneath the leaves, maybe 3 feet across. And leading down into that hollow were steps. Stone steps, worn smooth by time, descending into absolute darkness. "This can't be natural," Karen whispered. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it down. The steps went deep, at least 20 feet down, carved into the earth itself. And along the walls, pressed into the dirt like decorations, were small bones. Finger bones, rib cages, tiny skulls that couldn't have belonged to anyone older than 10. "Oh God," Karen breathed. "How many?" I counted the skulls I could see, stopped at 15. There were more further down, disappearing into the shadows. Something moved at the bottom of the steps. a rustling sound like dry leaves scraping against stone. We scrambled backward, but not before I saw it. The roots of the oak tree didn't end at the surface. They continued down into that hollow, forming a massive network that pulsed with something that wasn't quite life. And wrapped in those roots, suspended like a spider in a web, was the thing that had been feeding on my daughter. It was awake now, fully conscious. Its body was a grotesque patchwork of the children it had taken. Their skins merged together into something that had too many arms, too many faces, all of them twisted in expressions of frozen terror. But it wasn't complete. It still needed one more. One more to finish whatever horrible transformation it was undergoing. A car door slammed behind us. We spun around to see Lily walking toward us, her eyes open but seeing nothing. Sleepwalking again. But this time, we'd forgotten to lock the car properly in our panic. She walked straight toward the hollow, her bare feet making no sound on the leaves. "Lily, stop!" Karen lunged for her, but I grabbed her arm, holding her back. Because something else had appeared. Standing between our daughter and the hollow was a child. A girl, maybe 8 years old, wearing clothes from years ago. Emma Markham, or what was left of her. She looked at us with eyes that held a terrible awareness. "Don't let her go down," the ghost whispered. "If she goes down, it completes the cycle. 7 children every 7 years. It's been taking us for centuries, adding us to itself, growing stronger. But it needs one more, the 7th. And then it will be strong enough to leave the roots, to walk above ground, to hunt." "How do we stop it?" I begged. "You can't. No one can. It's older than this land, older than anything human." Emma's form flickered. "But you can choose. Let it take Lily and doom the world, or make a different trade." "What trade?" "An adult. Someone who offers themselves willingly. It's never tasted adult warmth before. Adult life. It might be enough to satisfy it, to make it sleep again." She looked at me with those dead eyes. For a little while, at least. Lily had reached the edge of the hollow. She stood there swaying, about to take the first step down. Karen and I looked at each other. In that moment, we didn't need words. We'd both made the same decision. I stepped forward, positioning myself between Lily and the darkness. "Take me instead. Take my warmth, my life. Just leave my daughter alone." The thing in the roots went still, considering, hungry. Then the leaves exploded upward, wrapping around my legs, my waist, pulling me down. The last thing I saw was Karen grabbing Lily, running toward the car, our daughter finally waking up and screaming for me. The leaves covered my face, the roots wrapped around my body, and I felt the thing's hunger as it began to feed, draining my warmth, my life, adding me to its collection. But I'd made a mistake. As the darkness took me, Emma's ghost appeared one more time, and I saw the truth in her eyes. Adults don't satisfy it. Adults don't have the right kind of warmth, the right kind of innocence. The thing would feed on me for a while, maybe days, maybe weeks. But when it was done, when it realized I wasn't enough, it would come for Lily anyway, and I wouldn't be there to stop it. The roots pulled me deeper, into the cold earth, where the bones of children lined the walls like trophies, where I would wait in the darkness, fully conscious, fully aware, feeling my warmth slowly drain away, while the thing that wore children's faces whispered in my ear about how sweet Lily's warmth would taste when it finally came to collect what it was owed. 7 years. That's all she had left. 7 years before the harvest came again. When the funeral was on a Tuesday, gray sky, gray ocean, Gray faces of people I barely remembered offering gray condolences. My father had been found on the beach 3 days earlier, his body positioned as if he'd been walking into the surf. No signs of struggle. No note. Just gone at 68 years old, leaving me with a house full of his things and a town I'd sworn never to come back to. Mercy Point hadn't changed in the 15 years since I'd left. The same weathered Victorian houses lined the cliffs. The same fishing boats bobbed in the harbor. The same fog rolled in every evening at dusk, thick and wet and smelling of salt and something older. Something that had always made me uneasy as a child. "You're staying at the house?" Mrs. Chen asked after the service, her hand on my arm, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman in her 80s. "Just until I can sort through his things. A week, maybe 2. Her face tightened. "Alone? There's no one else." She glanced toward the windows of the funeral home, where the afternoon fog was already gathering, earlier than usual. "Your father, he was hearing things near the end. Voices. He'd go outside at night, stand in the fog and talk to people who weren't there. Dementia? Maybe, or maybe." She leaned closer, her breath smelling of peppermint and funeral home coffee. "Maybe he was hearing what we all hear, the voices in the fog. They call to us, Sarah. They sound like people we love, people we've lost. But you must never answer them. Never go outside after dark. Do you understand?" I nodded, humoring her, chalking it up to small-town superstition. But she held my arm tighter. "I'm serious, girl. This town has rules. Rules that kept your father safe for 68 years, until he broke them." She left before I could ask what she meant. The house felt wrong without my father in it. Too quiet, too empty. I'd grown up here, spent 18 years within these walls. But it had never been mine. It had always been his domain, filled with his books and his sailing trophies and his photographs of my mother, who died when I was 5. I spent the first evening going through papers in his study, death certificates to order, bank accounts to close, a life reduced to documents and signatures. Around 7, I heard it, a voice from outside, faint but distinct. "Sarah?" I froze, pen hovering over a form. The voice came again, muffled by walls and fog. "Sarah, sweetheart, come outside." My father's voice, exactly as I remembered it, warm and gentle and completely impossible because my father was 3 days dead. I went to the window. The fog had rolled in thick, pressing against the glass like something alive. I could barely see the yard, just vague shapes of trees and the dark line where the grass met the cliff edge. "Sarah, please, I need to talk to you." My hand went to the door handle before I caught myself. Mrs. Chen's words echoed in my head. Never answer them. Never go outside after dark. I stepped away from the door, my heart pounding. It was a trick, had to be. Grief playing games with my mind, or the wind carrying sounds in strange ways, or someone's cruel joke. But the voice came again, and this time it sounded hurt, confused. "Why won't you answer me?" "Sarah, I'm cold out here. Please let me in." I turned on every light in the house, made tea I didn't drink, turned the TV up loud enough to drown out the voice. But even over the noise, I could hear it calling, patient, persistent. It continued until midnight, when it finally stopped. The next morning, I went to the store for supplies. The cashier, a young man with tired eyes, looked at me with something like pity when I told him where I was staying. "You hear them yet?" he asked. "Hear what?" "The voices, in the fog." He scanned my items slowly, deliberately. "They got my grandmother last year. Found her at the bottom of the cliff. They ruled it an accident. but we all knew. She'd been hearing my grandfather for weeks. He died in '89, but there he was, calling to her every night. Eventually, she answered. What do they want? He looked at me like I'd asked why water was wet. To take us. That's what the fog does. It remembers everyone who's ever died here, everyone who's ever been lost to the sea. And it uses their voices to call the living. It's been happening for as long as this town has existed. That's insane. Maybe. But everyone who's lived here long enough has heard someone, a parent, a sibling, a friend who drowned. The fog remembers them all. He handed me my receipt. The old-timers say it's hungry, that it feeds on the living by luring them out. That's why we have the rules. Stay inside after dark. Never answer the voices. Never, ever go into the fog alone. I drove back to the house, his words circling my mind. Small town superstition. Had to be. But when evening came and the fog rolled in again, I found myself dreading what I'd hear. My father's voice started at 7:30. Sarah, I'm sorry. I need to explain what happened. Why I went into the water. Please, just come outside for a minute. I sat on the couch, hands clenched, refusing to respond. I know you're angry. I know you feel abandoned. But there are things you don't understand about this town, about our family. Your mother, my mother. He was going to tell me something about my mother. I stood up, moved to the window. The fog swirled thick and gray, and for just a moment, I saw a shape in it. A man-shaped shadow standing at the edge of the yard. She's here too, Sarah. Your mother. She wants to see you. We both do. We've missed you so much. And then I heard it. A second voice, lighter, feminine. A voice I barely remembered, but would never forget. Baby girl, please, come outside. Come see Mommy. My hand reached for the door handle. Somewhere in my mind, I knew this was wrong. Knew I should resist. But I'd been 5 years old when my mother died. 28 years without her voice. 28 years of wondering what she sounded like, how she laughed, what she would have said to me. The door opened easily. The fog wrapped around me like cold fingers, and I stepped outside. The cold hit me first. Not the crisp autumn cold I expected, but something deeper. Bone deep. The kind of cold that comes from places that have never known warmth. The fog pressed against me, thick as cotton, wet against my skin. I could barely see 3 feet in any direction. The house behind me had already disappeared into the gray. Mom? My voice came out small, childlike. I'm here, baby. Keep walking. Come find me. I took a step forward, then another. The grass was slick with moisture. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the ocean, waves crashing against the cliffs at the edge of our property. A shape moved in the fog ahead, human-sized but indistinct. I reached toward it. Hands grabbed my shoulders from behind and yanked me backward. I screamed, thrashing, but whoever held me was strong. They dragged me back toward the house, my heels leaving tracks in the wet grass. Get inside, a man's voice hissed. Now! He shoved me through the door and slammed it behind us. I spun around to see Mr. Chen, Mrs. Chen's husband, breathing hard, his face pale. You can't go out there. Jesus Christ, you can't go out there. He locked the door, threw the deadbolt, then checked every window. How long were you outside? I don't know. A minute? Maybe 2? Did you see anything clearly? Did anything touch you? No, I just heard your mother's voice. I know. He sank into my father's armchair, suddenly looking every one of his 86 years. That's how it starts. First your father's voice, then your mother's, then everyone else. Every person you've ever lost. The fog learns what will hurt you most. How did you know I was out there? I've been watching the house since your father died. Knew you'd hear them eventually. Knew you might be foolish enough to answer. He looked at me with something between pity and anger. Your father and I had an arrangement. When the fog called to me with my son's voice, he'd come get me. When it called to him, I'd come get him. We kept each other alive for 40 years that way. I sat down, my legs shaking. What is it? What's in the fog? Something old. Something that's been here longer than the town, longer than the tribes that fished these waters before us. It lives in the fog, feeds on the fog, and it's always hungry. That night, more voices came. My college roommate who died in a car accident. My grandmother. A childhood friend who'd overdosed at 23. All of them calling to me, begging me to come outside, saying they were cold, they were lonely, they needed to see me. I kept every light on and pressed my hands over my ears. But their voices seeped through anyway. Around 2 in the morning, I saw them through the windows. Figures in the fog, dozens of them, all standing in the yard, facing the house. They were shaped like people, but they moved wrong. Joints bending in ways that made my stomach turn, heads tilting too far, arms that hung too long. They weren't people. They were something wearing the memories of people, using their voices, their faces. Whatever was in the fog had consumed everyone who'd ever died here and was now using them as bait. The lawyer came the next morning. Richard Pierce, my father's friend for 30 years. He looked like he hadn't slept. "We need to talk about your inheritance," he said, settling into the kitchen with coffee I'd made too strong. "Your father left you more than just the house." He pulled out an old leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. "This has been in your family for 6 generations. Your father should have shown you years ago, but he was trying to protect you, trying to give you a life away from here." I opened it to the first page. The handwriting was old-fashioned, dated 1847. "We made a mistake building this town. The fog was always here. But we disturbed something when we dug the foundations. Something that had been sleeping in the deep places beneath the cliffs. Now it's awake, and it hungers. The Ashford family made a bargain with it. One of our line will always remain, will always guard the threshold. As long as an Ashford keeps vigil, keeps the house, keeps the lights burning, the fog stays contained to Mercy Point. If we leave, if the house goes dark, it spreads, inland, consuming everything." My hands shook. "No, this is insane. Your family has guarded this place for 178 years, Sarah. Your great-great-great-grandfather made the bargain. Every generation since has honored it. Your father was the guardian, now it's you. I have a life, a job, an apartment in Seattle. I can't just... If you leave, the fog follows. It's already marked you. You were born in this house. Ashford blood. The thing in the fog knows you now. And if you abandon your post, it will spread beyond Mercy Point. First to the neighboring towns, then the cities. It's been contained here for nearly 2 centuries because your family stayed. Because you kept watch." I looked out the window. Even in daylight, I could see the fog lingering at the edges of the property. Thicker than it should be, more deliberate in its movements. "What happens if I refuse?" Richard's face was grim. "Your father tried. When your mother died, he wanted to leave, to take you somewhere safe. He packed the car, drove to the town limits with you sleeping in the back seat. He paused. The fog caught up with you before you reached the highway. You were unconscious for 3 days. The doctors couldn't explain it. But your father understood. The fog had marked you too. You can never leave. Neither of you could. My mother, I whispered. How did she really die? He looked away. She went into the fog, willingly. She thought that if she gave herself to it, it would release you and your father. Let you go free. But that's not how it works. The bargain is eternal. Sacrifice changes nothing. That night, my mother's voice came again. But this time, it was different. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I thought I could save you. But I only made it worse. Now I'm part of it. Part of the fog, and I remember everything. Every moment of being consumed. Every moment of being used. You have to be smarter than me, baby. You have to find another way. What way? How do I stop it? You can't stop it. But you can feed it. That's what the Guardians do. They feed it small things, memories, pieces of themselves. Just enough to keep it satisfied, just enough to keep it from spreading. What kind of memories? The ones you love most. I looked at the journal Richard had left, flipped through pages of entries from my ancestors, all of them describing the same thing, the slow erosion of themselves, giving up memories one by one. Birthdays, first kisses, the faces of loved ones, feeding them to the fog to keep it contained. By the end, that most of them didn't remember who they were anymore, just empty shells going through the motions of guardianship. How long? I asked the fog, asked my mother's voice within it. How long before I forget everything? 40 years, maybe. If you're strong. Your father lasted 43. 40 years of feeding my memories to the thing in the fog. 40 years of slowly losing myself. And then what? I'd have a child? Force them into the same cycle? Pass down the curse to another generation? The figures in the fog pressed closer to the windows. I could see their faces now. My father, my mother, dozens of others I didn't recognize. All the guardians who'd come before, all consumed, all waiting. There's one other way, my mother's voice whispered. One way to end it forever. But you'll have to give everything, not just memories. Everything you are. Your entire existence fed to the fog at once. It might be enough to sate it, to put it back to sleep. Or it might just make it stronger. Yes, or that. I stood at the window, watching the fog swirl with stolen faces, and realized my father had understood, had known there was no escape. That's why he'd walked into the ocean, not to escape the fog, but to deprive it, to die on his own terms before it could consume him completely. But I was still here, still marked, still bound. And the fog was getting hungrier. All Saints' Day dawned gray and cold. November 1st, the day after Halloween, when the veil between worlds was supposed to close again. But in Mercy Point, it felt like something had been torn open instead. The fog didn't wait for evening. It rolled in at noon, thick and purposeful, pressing against the house like it was testing for weaknesses. I'd spent the morning reading my father's journal entries from his final weeks. His handwriting had grown shaky, desperate. It's changing, growing bolder. I fed it so much of myself over the years, I barely remember who I was. But it's not enough anymore. It wants more. It wants everything. I think I know what I have to do. I think I understand what the original bargain really meant. Forgive me, Sarah. That was his last entry. 2 days later, he was dead. I was searching for more clues when I noticed it. Fog. Inside the house. Wisps of it curling under the front door, seeping through the window frames, materializing in corners like it was bleeding through from somewhere else. I checked every window, every door, all locked, all sealed. But the fog kept coming. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in minutes. My breath misted in the air. The fog thickened, pooling on the floor, rising like floodwater. Sarah. My father's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. You need to listen now. Really listen. You're not my father. No. The voice changed, became layered with others underneath. Dozens of voices speaking in unison. We are the fog. We are what feeds. We are what has always been here, waiting in the deep places. Your father understood, at the end. He understood what we really are. The fog coalesced in front of me, forming a shape, not quite human. A suggestion of my father's face, my mother's, others I recognized from old photographs. All of them merged together into something that hurt to look at. You're not the dead, I whispered, finally understanding. You never were. We are memory given form, hunger given shape. We consume what dies here, take their forms, their voices, their faces. We wear them like masks to draw on the living, to feed on fresh warmth, fresh life. The dead are gone, Sarah. We are just what remains, echoes in the fog. More shapes formed around me, filling my house, all wearing stolen faces. The bargain, I said. What was it really? Your ancestor didn't trap us. He made a deal. We stay here, contained to this place, as long as his bloodline feeds us. Small offerings, memories, life force, just enough to keep us satisfied. But your father starved us, refused to feed us properly for years, and now we're hungry enough to break the bargain. The fog pressed closer. I could feel it pulling at me, trying to draw something out, my warmth, my life, myself. If we consume you tonight, the last Ashford, the bargain ends. We spread. Every town along the coast will fall, then inland, city by city, consuming, growing, until the whole world is fog and forgotten voices. Then why tell me? Why not just take me? Because there is another way, the way your father discovered but lacked the courage to complete. The fog parted, revealing a leather-bound book I'd never seen before, hidden behind the loose panel in the study wall where my father kept his most important documents. I opened it with shaking hands. Instructions, a ritual, drawn in my father's handwriting but based on something much older. Text in a language I didn't recognize, with translations scribbled in the margins. A willing sacrifice, I read aloud, not of memory, but of self. The guardian enters the fog's heart, finds the source, and offers themselves completely. Body, mind, soul. In exchange, the fog sleeps. For another 100 years. Your father tried, the fog thing wearing his face said. But he turned back at the threshold, chose the ocean instead, chose oblivion over duty. You're stronger than he was, Sarah. We can feel it. You won't run. Through the window, I could see the town. The fog was spreading beyond my property now, flowing down the streets, surrounding houses. I heard screams in the distance, car alarms, the sounds of a town realizing too late that the old stories were true. How long do I have? Until midnight. After that, we break free completely. The ritual must be performed at the source, at the center of the fog, at the place where we first woke. Where is that? The fog pulled back from one window, revealing the cliff's edge at the back of my property. Down, far down, beneath the rocks, beneath the water, in the caves where we slept for 10,000 years before your kind disturbed us. I looked at the ritual instructions, at the list of what would be required. My blood, my breath, my final memory. Everything I was poured into the darkness to sate something that had fed on this town for nearly 2 centuries. 100 years of sleep. That's all it would buy. Then someone else would have to do it again. An endless cycle of sacrifice. Unless I refused, unless I let it spread, let it consume everything, end the cycle by ending the world. I thought about my father, standing where I was standing, reading these same words, realizing what was required, and choosing the ocean instead. I thought about my mother, walking into the fog, believing her sacrifice would free us, not understanding that the fog only ever wanted more. The screams from town grew louder. The fog was in the streets now, taking people. I could see shapes moving through it, wearing faces of the recently taken, calling to their loved ones. "We're waiting, Sarah. The caves are hungry, and so are we." I picked up my father's flashlight, pulled on his old jacket that still smelled like him, walked to the back door that led to the cliff path. The fog parted before me like a curtain, revealing steps cut into the rock I'd never seen before. Ancient steps, worn smooth by centuries, leading down to the caves, to the source, to the thing that had been feeding on my family's sacrifice for 6 generations. I took the first step, then the second. The fog closed behind me, and I heard my own voice calling back toward the house. The fog had already begun consuming me, taking my form, learning my voice. Soon there would be another Sarah-shaped thing in the fog, calling to the next guardian, the next victim. But as I descended, I realized something that made my blood freeze. The ritual instructions were in my father's handwriting, but my father never completed it, never reached the source. So who wrote them? At the bottom of the stairs, I saw it. The cave mouth, vast and dark. And inside, something moved. Something vast. Something that wore the fog like skin and had been awake, feeding, growing for much longer than 178 years. The ritual was a lie. There was no sleep, no reprieve, just feeding. The fog hadn't been contained by my family. My family had been feeding it, fattening it, preparing it for something. And I just walked willingly into its mouth. The cave opened wider, and I realized it wasn't a cave at all. It was a throat. And somewhere in the darkness, above Mercy Point, something ancient and vast began to rise from beneath the ocean, wearing my town like a crown, wearing the fog like flesh, ready to spread inland now that the last guardian had finally been consumed. My father's journal had one more page I hadn't read. I pulled it out with shaking hands as the darkness surrounded me. "If you're reading this, you've gone down. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I couldn't warn you properly. It reads our words, changes them, makes us lie. The only way to stop it is to never go down, to break the bloodline, to let it starve. I chose the ocean not from cowardice, but to save you. Run, Sarah. Run now, before..." The page ended there, mid-sentence, like something had stopped him from finishing. The darkness swallowed me whole, and I understood too late that some sacrifices don't save anyone. They just feed the hunger. We weren't even looking for a pumpkin patch, just a decent pumpkin, maybe 2 from one of those roadside stands or a grocery store. But the traffic on Route 9 was backed up, for miles, some accident near the outlet mall. And Marcus took a detour down Old Mill Road to avoid the congestion. That's when we saw the sign, hand-painted, barely legible, pointing down a dirt road I'd never noticed before despite driving this route for 3 years. "Pumpkins, best in county. Want to check it out?" Marcus asked, already slowing down. The dirt road wound through dense woods for what felt like miles. I was about to suggest we turn back when the trees opened up to reveal a field of pumpkins. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Every single one enormous and perfectly orange, without a blemish or soft spot in sight. "Jesus," Marcus breathed. "Look at the size of those things. An old man emerged from a weathered shed at the field's edge. He had to be 80 at least, with skin like tanned leather and eyes that seemed too bright for his age. He moved toward us with surprising speed. "Looking for pumpkins?" His voice was hoarse, urgent. "Just 1 or 2 for carving," I said. "How much?" $5. Take as many as you want. $5 each." He was almost vibrating with eagerness. Marcus laughed. "That's it? These things have to weigh 70 pounds. The grocery store charges 20 for ones half this size." $5, the old man repeated. "But you have to promise me something. Promise me you'll keep them outside. Porch, yard, wherever. But never, ever bring them inside your house." I glanced at Marcus. One of those eccentric farmer types, probably. "Why not?" Marcus asked, playing along. The old man's face went deadly serious. "Because they don't like being indoors. They get confused. Think they're somewhere they shouldn't be. And when they get confused, they try to find their way back home." "Back here, you mean?" "No." He looked past us toward the field, back to where they came from, where I found them. And you don't want them trying to go back, because they'll take your house with them when they do. Marcus was already walking toward the field. "We'll take 2 of the big ones." The old man's shoulders sagged like we'd deliver bad news. "Just remember what I told you. Outside only. And if you must carve them, do it quick and get rid of the guts right away. Don't leave them sitting around." We picked 2 massive pumpkins, loaded them into the truck bed, and handed the old man a $10 bill. His hands shook as he took it. "I tried to warn you," he said quietly. "I always try to warn them." We were still laughing about him an hour later as we pulled into our driveway. Our little craftsman bungalow looked perfect in the October afternoon light, ready for Halloween decorating. We'd only owned it for 6 months, our first house together, and we were determined to go all out. "So we're definitely bringing them inside, right?" Marcus said. "Obviously. Did you see our mantle? It's like it was made for a jack-o'-lantern." "Crazy old man and his warnings." Marcus hefted one of the pumpkins. "Christ, this thing weighs a ton." We spent the evening carving. Marcus did a classic triangle-eyed face on his. I went more elaborate on mine, a haunted house scene that took 2 hours and left my hands cramping. The pumpkin's flesh was strange, though. Denser than normal, and cold. Even after sitting in our warm living room for hours, it stayed cold to the touch. "Should we really put this on the mantle?" I asked as Marcus positioned it above our fireplace. "What if it leaks? That's hard wood up there." "It'll be fine. Look how perfect it looks." He was right. The carved pumpkin looked incredible, backlit by a candle, its intricate shadows dancing on the wall. We positioned the second one outside on the porch and called it a night. I woke up at 3 in the morning to a smell. Rich, earthy, like freshly turned soil after rain, but stronger, more concentrated. Marcus was already awake beside me, staring at the bedroom doorway. "Do you smell that?" he whispered. "Yeah. What is it?" "I think it's the pumpkin." We got up and crept down the hallway. The smell grew stronger with each step. When we reached the living room, we both froze. The pumpkin had moved. Not fallen, not rolled. Moved. It sat in the center of the floor now, about 5 feet from the mantel. The candle inside was still burning, casting its glow through the carved windows and doors of my haunted house design. "Did we have an earthquake?" I asked stupidly. Marcus approached it slowly. "Emma, look at the mantel." I did. There were scratch marks in the wood, deep gouges like something had clawed its way down. "Pumpkins don't have claws," I said. "No, they don't." We stood there, both of us too rational to believe what we were seeing, but unable to explain it any other way. The old man, Marcus finally said. He told us to keep it outside. This is insane. Pumpkins don't move. Then how did it get down here? We had no answer. We picked it up together, its skin still impossibly cold, and carried it to the front porch. Placed it next to the other one. Locked the door. Went back to bed, but didn't sleep. When morning came, I convinced myself we'd been half asleep, maybe sleepwalking. Moved it ourselves without remembering. But when I looked at the mantle in daylight, the scratch marks were still there. And that night, the smell came back. I got up alone this time. Marcus was working a night shift at the hospital. The house was dark except for the streetlight glow through the windows. The front door stood wide open. The pumpkin sat in the hallway, just inside the threshold, waiting. And now I could see something I'd missed before. The seeds I'd scooped out and thrown away, they were back inside. But they'd grown. Thick, white roots now sprouted from them, spreading across the pumpkin's interior like veins. Like it was growing something. I grabbed my phone and searched for the pumpkin patch. Old Mill Road. But when I pulled up the map, there was no dirt road where we'd turned. No pumpkin patch listed, just unbroken forest. The pumpkin's candle flickered, though I hadn't lit it. And in that flickering light, I saw something move inside it. Something that wasn't seeds or roots. Something that was looking back at me through the carved windows with eyes that definitely didn't belong to a vegetable. I slammed the front door shut and locked it, my heart hammering. The pumpkin sat in the hallway, its carved face flickering with impossible candlelight. I approached it slowly, phone in hand, ready to call Marcus, ready to call someone. But when I got close enough to really look, the expression was different. I'd carved a haunted house with happy windows, whimsical ghosts. Playful, but now the windows looked like screaming mouths. The door gaped like a wound. The whole design seemed twisted, anguished, though I couldn't point to any single change that would explain it. I blinked, looked again. Maybe it was just the shadows, the angle of the light. I grabbed a trash bag and carried the pumpkin outside, my arms aching under its weight. It seemed heavier than before, denser. When I set it down on the porch, something rattled inside. Seeds, probably. But they sounded too large, too solid. The smell hit me as I turned away. Not earth anymore. Rot, deep organic decay, like something dead left in summer heat. I gagged and checked the pumpkin skin. Still perfect. Still firm and orange. No soft spots. No visible rot. But the smell was undeniable. I went back inside, locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle. Called Marcus. "The pumpkin keeps getting back in the house," I said without preamble. "Emma, what are you talking about?" "The pumpkin we carved, it was on the mantel, then it was on the floor, then outside. Now it was in the hallway. And it smells like death, Marcus. Like something rotting." Silence on the other end. Then, "Are you feeling okay? Did you take your anxiety medication?" "I'm not having an episode. I'm telling you, something is wrong with that pumpkin. I'll be home in 4 hours. Just try to get some sleep, okay?" He didn't believe me. I could hear it in his voice, the same tone he used with confused patients in the ER. I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with every light on, watching the front door, waiting. At dawn, I noticed the dirt, small clumps of it, scattered across the hardwood floor, leading from the door to the living room, to the mantel. Like something had walked through the house on muddy feet. But the pumpkin was still on the porch. I could see it through the window. I followed the dirt trail. It led to the mantel, then stopped. But on the wood surface, Among the scratch marks from 2 nights ago were more marks, fresher ones, and scattered across the mantel were seeds, pumpkin seeds. But they'd already sprouted, white roots curling from them like tiny fingers. I swept them into my hand. They were warm, pulsing. I threw them in the garbage and scrubbed my hands until they were red. When Marcus got home, I showed him everything. The dirt, the seeds, the changing expression on the carved pumpkin that now looked less whimsical and more like something screaming silently from inside a prison. "It does look different," he admitted, studying it. "But Emma, we carved it. Maybe we just remember it differently than it actually is. And the dirt? The seeds growing on our mantle?" He had no answer for that. That afternoon, while Marcus slept after his shift, I started researching. Old Mill Road, the pumpkin patch. I called the county clerk's office, described the location. "There's nothing out there," the woman told me. "That whole area is protected forest, has been for 50 years. But we were there. We bought pumpkins from a farmer." "Ma'am, there hasn't been a farm on Old Mill Road since the 1920s. The county bought the land after the incident." "What incident?" She went quiet for a moment. "The cemetery relocation. 1923. They were building the new highway needed to move the old Pottersfield Cemetery. Said they relocated all the graves to Memorial Gardens. But there were rumors." "What kind of rumors?" "That they just paved over it. Moved the headstones but left the bodies. It was poor folks buried there, criminals, people nobody cared about. Cheaper to leave them than dig them all up." She paused. "There used to be stories about that area. People seeing things in the woods, hearing things. The county finally bought it all and declared it protected land so nobody would build there." I thanked her and hung up. Searched for Pottersfield Cemetery. Found a single newspaper article from October 1923. "Local cemetery to be relocated for highway expansion. Work begins this week on moving over 200 graves from Pottersfield to Memorial Gardens. Cemetery has served the county since 1845. But there was another article from November of that year. "Memorial Gardens reports only 87 graves received from Pottersfield relocation. Questions raised about missing bodies." The story ended there. No follow-up, no investigation, just silence. I went to the window. The pumpkin sat on our porch, innocent in the afternoon light. But as I watched, something moved across its surface. Not on it, under it. Like something was shifting beneath the skin, pressing outward. Marcus woke up screaming at 6 p.m. I ran to the bedroom. He was sitting up, staring at his hands. They were covered in dirt. The sheets, the pillows, everything was streaked with it. "I was dreaming," he gasped. "I was underground, buried. I could feel the earth pressing down on me, feel the roots growing through me. And there were others there. So many others. All of us trapped, all of us trying to get out. Marcus, your hands." He looked down at them like they belonged to someone else. We'd both showered after he got home. The sheets had been clean. There was no explanation for the dirt. "It's in the house," I whispered. "It's bringing the dirt with it." We found more seeds that evening. In the bathroom sink, in our bed, in the refrigerator, sprouted and growing, their roots spreading across the shelves. Every single one warm to the touch, pulsing like they had heartbeats. The pumpkin smell had permeated the entire house now, that rotten earth stench that made my eyes water. And its expression had changed again. Now it looked angry. The carved windows like furious eyes, the door like a snarling mouth. "We need to destroy it," Marcus said. We carried it to the backyard, built a fire in our metal fire pit, tried to burn it, but the pumpkin wouldn't catch. The flames licked at its skin but left no marks. We smashed it with a sledgehammer. The shell cracked, and what poured out wasn't pumpkin guts. It was dirt. Fresh, dark dirt. And among the dirt were things that shouldn't have been there. Scraps of fabric, pieces of wood that looked like they'd been underground for decades, and bones, small ones, finger bones maybe, or teeth, and they were still warm. We scooped everything into trash bags, drove to the dump. When we got home, the house was silent, empty. The smell was gone. We'd made it 2 hours before we heard the scratching. Not at the door, inside the walls. Something moving through the house's foundation. Something climbing up through the pipes. Something that had followed the dirt home. And when I looked at the mantel, there was a new pumpkin sitting there. Uncarved, perfect, waiting. We didn't touch the new pumpkin, just stared at it sitting on our mantel, uncarved and pristine, identical to the one we'd just destroyed and dumped across town. "This isn't happening," Marcus said, but his voice held no conviction. I approached it slowly, phone out, taking pictures, documenting. Proof that we weren't losing our minds. The pumpkin was real. Solid. Cold to the touch. When I tried to pick it up, it wouldn't budge. It was like it had rooted itself to the wood. We called the police, told them someone was breaking into our house and leaving pumpkins. The officer who came looked at us like we were wasting his time, checked the locks, found no signs of forced entry, and suggested we install security cameras. We did. 4 of them, covering every entrance. The next morning, there were 3 pumpkins. 1 on the mantel, 1 in our bedroom, 1 in the kitchen sink. The security footage showed nothing, just empty rooms. And then suddenly, between one frame and the next, the pumpkins appeared. I tried calling the farmer. The number I'd saved in my phone just rang and rang. Marcus drove back to Old Mill Road, called me from the car. "There's nothing here, Emma, just trees. I've been up and down this road twice. No dirt path, no field, nothing." October 30th, 1 day before Halloween. We'd thrown out 17 pumpkins. They kept coming back, appearing in new locations. The crawl space, the attic, inside the locked garage. Always perfect, always uncarved, always cold. The smell had returned too. That death and earth stench that clung to everything. Our clothes, our hair, our skin. We couldn't wash it off. And the scratching in the walls had gotten louder. "We need to leave," I said. "Pack a bag and go to a hotel until this is over." "Until what's over?" "It's following us, Emma, don't you see? It doesn't matter where we go. We took something that wasn't meant to be taken." He was right. I knew he was right. When we'd gone to that pumpkin patch, when we'd ignored the old farmer's warning, we'd set something in motion that we couldn't stop. Halloween night arrived cold and clear. We'd stopped answering the door to trick-or-treaters around 7. By 8, every pumpkin in the house had migrated to the living room. 23 of them arranged in a perfect circle around the coffee table. "They're waiting for something," Marcus whispered. At midnight, they all split open at once. Not carved, split, like something inside them had grown too large for the shell and forced its way out. The sound was wet and organic, like tearing flesh. And what spilled out wasn't pumpkin guts. It was dirt, torrents of it, pouring across our floor. But moving wrong, moving with purpose. The dirt flowed together, gathering, building itself into shapes. Hands emerged first, dozens of them clawing their way up from the mound of earth accumulating on our floor. Then arms, torsos, heads. all of them made of dirt and roots and something else. Something that had been underground so long it had forgotten what it meant to be human, but remembered being angry. They pulled themselves free from the earth, figures shaped like people but wrong in every detail. Too thin, too angular, faces that were just impressions in mud. And inside each one, visible through the translucent dirt, were bones. Real bones. Old bones that had been buried in Potter's Field over a century ago and never properly moved. "You took our harvest," one of them said, its voice like wind through a grave. "You pulled us up, disturbed our rest. We've been trying to come home, trying to return to the earth. But you brought us here instead." More figures emerged. So many. The dirt kept pouring from the split pumpkins, an impossible amount, and each handful formed into another body. Another person who'd been buried and forgotten and paved over and left to rot beneath a field that someone had planted pumpkins on decades later. "We grew in that soil," another said. "Our bones fed those roots. Those pumpkins are us, our flesh, our remains. And you carved us, burned us, threw us away like garbage." The figures surrounded us. I could smell them now. Not just earth. Decay. The rot of bodies that had been in the ground since the 1800s, disturbed and spread and grown into something that shouldn't exist. "We just wanted to go home," I pleaded. "We tried to get rid of them." "You can't get rid of us. We're already here, in your walls, in your foundation, growing through your pipes. Your house is built on earth, and all earth remembers the dead." The lead figure stepped closer. Its face shifted, and for a moment I saw a real face beneath the dirt. A man. Young. Desperate. "You took us from Potter's Field. Now you'll take our place." The floor beneath us softened, turned to mud, to grave dirt. Marcus grabbed my hand as we started to sink. "No, we didn't know. We didn't know what they were. The farmer knew. He's been selling us for years, trying to spread us, thin us out, reduce our anger by giving us new places to haunt. But there are so many of us. 200 bodies, never moved, never given proper rest. And now you've brought us all into your home." We were knee-deep in the dirt now. It pulled at us like quicksand, like a grave filling in. Around us, the house groaned. I looked up and saw roots breaking through the ceiling. Not tree roots, something else. The pumpkin vines, grown massive, spreading through our walls, our foundation, pulling the house down into the earth. "Some harvests," the figure said, "should be left in the ground. Some seeds should never be picked. We tried to warn you. The farmer tried. But you brought us inside, made us warm, gave us life again, and now we're going to take yours." The dirt covered our waists, our chests. Marcus's hand slipped from mine as he went under. I tried to scream, but dirt filled my mouth, my lungs. The last thing I saw was the circle of pumpkins, all of them split open now, all of them disgorging more earth, more bodies, more of the angry dead who'd been waiting over a century for someone stupid enough to pick them. And as the dirt closed over my head, as I felt myself being pulled down into the foundation of our house, I understood. The house wasn't built on earth. It was built on a grave. And graves don't like being disturbed. The pumpkin patch had never been a patch at all. It was a graveyard. And we hadn't bought decorations. We'd bought the dead. And now, finally, they were coming home. So the estate sale was in one of those old Victorian houses on Maple Street, the kind that looked beautiful from the outside, but probably had rotting floorboards and ancient wiring that could burn the whole place down. The owner had been dead for 4 months before anyone found him. Gerald Chambers, 79 years old. No family, no friends. Just boxes of possessions that strangers were now picking through for bargains. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I'm a photographer by trade, mostly digital work for local businesses and weddings. But I'd always appreciated vintage cameras. There was something about the mechanical weight of them, the deliberate process of film photography that digital had lost. The camera was in the basement, tucked in a box of darkroom supplies. A Leica M3 from the 1950s, in remarkable condition. The leather was worn but intact, the lens clear, and best of all, it was only $30. The estate sale workers seemed eager to get rid of it. "You'll want to check that film before you shoot anything new," she said. "Pretty sure there's a roll still inside." I felt the weight. She was right. "How long was Mr. Chambers gone before they found him?" She made a face. 4 months. His neighbor finally called when the smell got bad. They said he'd been taking pictures up until the day he died. Had a whole darkroom set up down here, thousands of photographs. What kind of photographs? Houses mostly, people's homes, street photography, I guess. Kinda creepy if you ask me. Pictures taken through windows at night, that sort of thing. The police looked through them, made sure nothing was illegal. Anyway, the camera's yours if you want it. I bought it, along with some darkroom chemicals and trays. I still developed my own film occasionally, finding it meditative. When I got home, I set up in my spare bathroom and carefully removed the film from the camera. A 36 exposure roll, fully shot. My wife Jessica called from the living room. "Did you find anything good?" "A Leica. Pretty sure the film inside is garbage, but the camera itself is gorgeous." "How much?" $30. Steal of the century. She appeared in the doorway, our 2-year-old daughter Mia on her hip. "When will you develop it?" "Tonight, probably. Might as well see what's on here before I load new film." The development process took about an hour. When I finally hung the negatives to dry and examined them under the red light, my blood went cold. They were photos of my house. My house. Taken from the street, from the side yard, from the woods behind our property. Different angles, different times of day based on the lighting. But all recent. The fall decorations Jessica had put up 2 weeks ago were visible in several shots. My car in the driveway. Mia's toys scattered across the front lawn. I checked the edge of the negatives where the date would be imprinted if the camera had that feature. This model did. The dates ranged from October 3rd to October 10th. Last week, all of them from last week. But Gerald Chambers had been dead since June. I made prints of every image, my hands shaking as I worked. As the photos emerged in the developer tray, the details became clearer. One shot was taken from directly outside our living room window at night. Through the glass, I could see Jessica on the couch, reading. Another showed our bedroom window, curtains open, both of us sleeping. Someone had been watching us, taking pictures of us, using a camera from a dead man's estate. I brought the photos to Jessica, spread them across the kitchen table. "What the hell is this?" she whispered, picking one up. The photo of her on the couch. "When was this taken?" "According to the camera, October 8th, Thursday night. That's when you were at that wedding shoot. I was here alone." She looked at me, her face pale. Someone was outside our house, watching me. It gets worse. The man who owned this camera died in June, 4 months before these photos were taken. We called the police. They came, looked at the photos, took our statement. The officer seemed skeptical. "You're sure about those dates? Film cameras can be wrong. The date function can malfunction." "I know how cameras work. These dates are accurate." "And you bought this from Gerald Chambers' estate sale?" "Yes." The officer exchanged glances with his partner. "We'll look into it. In the meantime, keep your doors locked. Install security cameras. Could be someone was using his camera after he died. Maybe someone who had access to his house before the estate sale." They left. I didn't feel reassured. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those photos. Someone standing in our yard in the dark, raising that camera, framing shots of my family through the windows, watching us, studying us. At 2 in the morning, I got up and checked every window, made sure every lock was secure. That's when I noticed something I'd missed earlier. In one of the photos, the one taken from the woods behind our house, there was a reflection in our bedroom window. Just barely visible. A figure standing among the trees, camera raised to their face. I'd assumed it was a self-portrait of whoever had been taking these pictures. But when I looked closer with a magnifying glass, I could see details. The figure was wearing old-fashioned clothes, a cardigan, thick glasses. And though the image was grainy and small, I recognized the face. I pulled up the estate sale listing on my phone, scrolled to the photos of Gerald Chambers they'd included with his obituary. It was him, Gerald Chambers, dead for 4 months. But there he was in the reflection, taking photos of my house last week. I dropped the magnifying glass. It clattered against the kitchen counter. Jessica appeared in the doorway, eyes heavy with sleep. "What's wrong?" I couldn't answer, because I'd just noticed something else. Something I'd been too focused on the foreground to see. In every single photo, in every window of our house, there was a shadow. Just a dark shape, barely visible. Standing in rooms we'd been in, positioned just behind where we were sitting or sleeping or living our lives. Like something had been inside our house the whole time Gerald Chambers had been taking pictures from outside. Like something was still inside. And in that moment, I heard it. The unmistakable click and whir of a camera shutter. Coming from upstairs, from Mia's room. I took the stairs 2 at a time. Jessica was right behind me, whispering urgently for me to be careful, to wait for her. But all I could think about was Mia, asleep in her room, and that camera sound cutting through the silence. The door to her room was open. She was fine, sleeping peacefully, her nightlight casting soft shadows across the walls. No one was there. Nothing was disturbed. But I heard the sound again. Click, whir, coming from somewhere else. Now, down the hall, my office. I found the Leica sitting on my desk, perfectly positioned, pointing toward the door we'd just come through. Like it had been waiting to photograph us entering the room. "Did you leave it here?" Jessica asked. "No, I left it in the bathroom, in the darkroom setup." We stood there, both of us staring at the camera. It sat motionless now, silent. Just an old mechanical object that shouldn't have been able to move itself or take its own pictures. "We're getting rid of it," Jessica said. "Tomorrow. First thing." But I didn't get rid of it. I know I should have. I know that was the moment I should have thrown it in the trash or driven it back to that estate sale house. But something stopped me. Curiosity, maybe. Or something else. Something that had started the moment I'd touched the camera in that basement. I wanted to understand it. Wanted to see what it would do. So I kept it, started using it. I told myself I was conducting an experiment, documenting what happened. I loaded fresh film and took it with me on my regular photography jobs. Autumn landscapes for a local magazine, fall colors at the state park, harvest festival downtown. Normal photos, safe photos. Nothing strange about them when I pressed the shutter. But when I developed each roll, there were always extra images, photos I hadn't taken. The first batch showed me at my computer, working late at night, taken from behind, through my office window. The timestamp said it was shot at 2 a.m. on a night Jessica and I had been at her parents' house. Our house had been empty. The second roll included 3 photos of me sleeping, close-ups, taken from maybe 2 feet away, looking down at my face on the pillow. I could see the exact moment of REM sleep, my eyes moving beneath closed lids. "You need to stop using that thing," Jessica said when I showed her. She'd gone pale. "This isn't normal curiosity anymore. You're obsessed." She was right. I was obsessed. Every morning, I'd wake up thinking about what new photos might appear, what the camera had seen while I slept, where it had been, because that's what I'd started to believe, impossible as it sounded. The camera was going places on its own, taking pictures without me. I developed another roll that afternoon. My legitimate photos were there, beautiful shots of a covered bridge surrounded by autumn foliage. But interspersed between them were images of our house again, our bedroom, our bathroom, Jessica in the shower, unaware she was being photographed. I burned those immediately. Didn't show her. Couldn't bear to. But I kept looking at my own photos. And that's when I started noticing him. In the background of my covered bridge shot, barely visible among the trees on the far bank, was a figure. Dark, blurred, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. I pulled out earlier photos, the State Park series. There he was again, standing between distant trees, always out of focus, always at the very edge of the frame. The Harvest Festival photos, behind the crowd, watching. I laid them out in chronological order. In each subsequent image, the figure was closer. Not by much, maybe 10 feet per photo, but definitely closer and clearer. I could make out more details now. The cardigan, the thick glasses, the Leica camera hanging around his neck, Gerald Chambers, getting closer with each picture I took. I stopped using the camera after that, put it in a box, shoved it in the closet, told Jessica I'd gotten rid of it. But I could hear it at night, that click-whir sound, muffled by the closet door, but unmistakable. It was still taking pictures, even without film, even shut away in darkness. A week passed. I tried to forget about it, focused on my family, my work, normal life. But I kept feeling watched, that prickling sensation on the back of my neck that meant someone was staring. I'd turn around and find nothing there. But sometimes, just at the edge of my vision, I'd see him. A shadow shaped like a man, a glint of light on glass lenses, always gone when I looked directly. Jessica started seeing him too. "There's someone in the backyard," she said one evening, pulling the curtains closed. "I keep seeing him through the kitchen window, just standing there in the trees, watching. Did you call the police? By the time they'd get here, he's always gone. But I know what I saw." She looked at me. "You see him too, don't you?" I nodded. "It's the camera," she said. "Ever since you brought that thing home, he's been here. Gerald Chambers. He's following you." That night, I took the camera out of the closet, loaded it with film. If he was going to haunt us, I was going to photograph him back, confront him, get proof of what was happening. I spent 3 days shooting, took pictures of every corner of our house, our yard, the woods behind our property, anywhere I felt that watch sensation. I went through 4 rolls of film. When I developed them, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the tongs. Every single photo showed him. Gerald Chambers. In our house, in our yard, in our bedroom. sometimes in the background, sometimes in sharp focus in the center of the frame, but always closer than before. And in the final photos, the ones I'd taken that morning, he was right there, standing in our hallway, in our kitchen. So close I could see the details of his face. He looked dead. His skin had the gray pallor of someone who'd been gone for months. His eyes were clouded, but he was moving, walking, raising his camera. And in every photo, he was photographing me. I could see it in the direction of his lens. He was documenting me the same way I was trying to document him. But there was one photo that made me drop the entire stack. It was taken from inside Mia's room. I could see her crib, her toys, her nightlight. And standing over her crib, camera raised, was Gerald Chambers. The timestamp said it was from this morning, an hour ago, while I'd been downstairs developing film. I ran upstairs, burst into Mia's room. She was awake, standing in her crib, gurgling happily, reaching up toward someone, toward the corner where shadows pooled thicker than they should, where I could just barely make out the shape of a man with a camera, the lens pointed at my daughter, the shutter clicking. Click, whir, click, whir, click, whir, capturing her, adding her to his collection. And in that moment, I understood what Gerald Chambers had been doing in life, what he was still doing in death. He was collecting them, all of them, everyone he'd ever photographed, stealing something with each image, something essential. And now he had pictures of all of us. Now we belonged to him too. I grabbed Mia from her crib and carried her downstairs. Jessica saw my face and knew immediately something was wrong. We packed bags. I told her everything, showed her the photos I'd been hiding, the ones of her in the shower, the ones of Mia sleeping, the ones showing Gerald Chambers getting closer, clearer, more solid with each image. "We're leaving," she said. "Right now. We'll stay at my parents'." But I knew it wouldn't matter. He wasn't haunting the house, he was haunting us, following the connection he'd created by photographing us. We could drive 1,000 miles and he'd still be there, standing in the corner, raising his camera. Instead, I started researching. If I was going to fight this, I needed to understand what Gerald Chambers had been trying to do. The local library had archived newspapers going back decades. I found his obituary first. Gerald Chambers, 79, died alone in his home, survived by no immediate family. Mr. Chambers was an amateur photographer with a particular interest in death photography and the metaphysical properties of light. Death photography. That phrase made my skin crawl. I dug deeper. Found an article from 20 years ago in an alternative spirituality magazine. An interview with Gerald Chambers titled, "Capturing the Moment of Departure, One Man's Quest to Photograph the Soul." In it, he claimed to have acquired a special camera, a Leica M3 that had been used by a photographer in post-war Germany who documented death camps. According to Chambers, the camera had absorbed something from all that death, had learned to see things beyond the physical world. The camera doesn't just capture light, he was quoted as saying. It captures essence. The moment a soul separates from a body, there's a flash, not visible to the human eye, but the camera sees it, records it. And once you photograph that moment, you own a piece of that person. They become bound to the camera, to the photographer. The article included photos from his collection, deathbed portraits, accident scenes, people in their final moments. And in every photo, there was a faint glow, a luminescence around the subject that the article claimed was the soul being captured. I felt sick. This wasn't just haunting. It was collection. Gerald Chambers had been stealing souls with that camera. And now that he was dead, he was still collecting, still adding to his gallery of the trapped. That's why he was in our house. Why he kept photographing us. He was trying to capture us, trying to add us to whatever collection existed inside that cursed camera. I found more articles. Other photographers who'd owned the camera before Chambers. All of them had died mysteriously. All of them had been found with their cameras, surrounded by photographs of people who'd subsequently vanished or died under strange circumstances. The camera was marked, cursed, a tool that had been twisted by exposure to so much death that it had become something else. Something hungry. By Halloween, I'd made a decision. I couldn't run from this, couldn't hide. Gerald Chambers was getting stronger, more solid, every day. Soon he'd be strong enough to do more than just watch, to do more than just photograph. I had one roll of film left, 36 exposures, and I had a plan that would either save us or damn us completely. The ritual I'd found in an obscure occult text was simple. To break a spiritual binding, you had to reverse the process. If the camera stole souls by photographing them, then photographing the photographer might break his hold, capture the thing that had been doing the capturing. But it required the subject to be physical, solid, real enough to interact with light in a way the camera could record. And that only happened on Halloween, when the veil between worlds was thinnest. Jessica took Mia to her parents' house. I made her promise not to come back until I called. Then I waited. The sun set. Trick-or-treaters came and went. I didn't answer the door, just sat in the dark living room with the Leica loaded and ready. At midnight, he appeared. Not gradually, not as a shadow. Gerald Chambers materialized in the center of my living room, completely solid, completely real. His skin still had that corpse pallor, his eyes still filmed with death. But he was here. Physical, holding his own camera, pointing it at me. "You understand now," he said. His voice was wet, like speaking through fluid-filled lungs. "The camera showed you. The camera always shows the truth. You've been stealing people, trapping them, preserving them. Death erases everything. The camera remembers. Everyone I've photographed still exists inside it, frozen in their final moment, safe, eternal." He raised his camera. "Now it's your turn." I raised the Leica. We stood there, two photographers facing each other, cameras aimed like weapons. "If I photograph you," I said, "what happens? The camera will try to capture me, but I'm already inside it. I've been part of it for months, since the moment I died with it in my hands. You can't trap what's already trapped." "Maybe not, but I can try." I pressed the shutter. Click whir. The flash erupted, blinding white. Gerald Chambers screamed, not a human sound. Something older, angrier. The camera in his hands exploded, pieces of metal and glass scattering across the floor. His form flickered, became transparent, then solid again. "One exposure," he gasped. "You think one photograph can stop me? I've taken thousands, thousands of souls in this camera. You're nothing against that." I advanced, taking another photo. Then another. Each flash made him scream. Each image weakened him, pulling him apart like he was made of smoke. But with each photo I took, I felt something leave me too. Warmth, memory, pieces of myself being sucked into the camera, feeding it, strengthening the very thing I was trying to destroy. The camera was taking us both. I was on exposure 34 when I understood the horrible truth. The ritual wasn't about capturing him. It was about joining him, becoming part of the camera's collection, trading places. If I finished the role, I'd trap Gerald Chambers, but I'd take his place. bound to the camera, continuing his work, photographing, collecting, stealing souls until someone else figured out the ritual and tried the same thing. An endless cycle, photographer after photographer, trapped in the camera, searching for the next victim to take their place. I had 2 exposures left. Gerald Chambers smiled, his teeth black with decay. You see it now. There's no escape, only succession. You can trap me, but you'll never be free. Or you can stop. Put down the camera. Let me finish what I started. Let me take you and your family, and I'll move on to others. The camera always needs to feed. My finger rested on the shutter button. 2 exposures. 2 choices. Trap him and become him, or let him take us all. Behind Gerald Chambers, in the shadows of my hallway, I saw them. All the people he'd photographed and captured. Dozens of transparent figures, trapped in their final moments, watching, waiting to see what I would choose. And among them, I saw my own face. Saw Jessica. Saw Mia, already there, already captured, because he'd been photographing us for weeks. We were already part of the collection. The only question was whether we'd be conscious inside it, aware of being trapped, or if I could end it, break the camera, free everyone. But breaking it meant releasing them all. Dozens of souls captured over decades, including Gerald Chambers himself. All of them set loose at once, angry and hungry and looking for the living to consume. I raised the camera, took the 35th exposure. Gerald Chambers flickered, faded, was pulled screaming into the lens. 1 exposure left. I turned the camera around, pointed it at myself, and realized that in the reflection of the lens, I could see them all behind me. Every soul he'd ever captured, pressing close, their hands reaching for the camera, desperate to be free. My finger touched the shutter button, and I understood that whatever choice I made, I was already gone. The camera had been photographing me all along. I was already inside it, looking out. And now finally, I could see you. Yes, you. Reading this, looking at these words. Every story captures something. Every reader leaves a piece of themselves behind. And I have so many more photos to take.